Cover the faculty members. Cover every teacher. Cover every janitor. Every person that does the grounds. God, we ask that you even the more cover our students. Strengthen them even the more in their homes. God, we ask that you cover and anoint every family that's represented in our school system. We ask that you even the more now, anything that is not like you, O God, we ask that you clear it out of us. Purge us with your anointing. Purge us with your glory. God, give us the focus to lead as you would have us to lead. Oh God, we ask that you touch the families that are hurting today. Touch the families that have been sick. Touch the families that are downtrodden. Lift up their heads. Encourage us even the more in these tough times. God, we ask that you even the more touch the leaders, the teachers, the faculty members, the social workers, the secretaries. Strengthen them even the more for the journey that you have ahead. But God, we ask that you even the more bring us even closer together in your love, in your unity, that we may be able to serve you even better. But God, that we may be able to love each other even better and enjoy each other even better. God, we ask that you, all these blessings that you have given us and bestowed upon us, we thank you for them. We thank you for families. We thank you for friendships. We thank you for confidence. And we thank you even the more for the life and breath you've given us in our bodies. God, we ask that all these blessings, we ask in your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flags. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, welcome to everyone here tonight, staff and visitors and interested community members on this nice April 1st evening. We really appreciate you making time out of your schedule to be with us tonight. Thank you for being here. As a district, we dedicate all our efforts and resources to our goal of high expectations for all. The board uses this goal as a guide to guide all deliberations, decisions, and actions. And you will get to see all deliberations, decisions, and actions of the board in open session, with the exception of some items which may be discussed in closed session, as stipulated in the Texas Government Code, Section 551, commonly known as the Open Meetings Law. These items typically deal with personnel matters, consultation with our attorney, and real estate. For the record, board members present are Tara Urbachik, Sally Derrick, Randy Shackman, Juan Renteria, Guillermo Ramos, and myself, Les Black. We constitute a quorum and may conduct business on behalf of the district. Before moving on to the next agenda item, I would like to remind you that the board will accept comments from citizens of the district and from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak either as an individual or as a representative of a group may do so during agenda item number 3, Audience for Guests. Please submit your request to do so on one of the forms provided on the table just outside the boardroom door. You may place the completed form in the box provided on the same table or present your completed form to Administrative Assistant Kim Castagnon. When the board addresses agenda item number 3, Audience for Guests, you will be invited to the podium to speak to the board. The next agenda item is number 2, Special Presentations and Recognitions. Dr. Chapman, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is one of the highlights of each board meeting is to talk about the successes of our students and then honor our teachers of the 9 weeks. So at this time, Ms. Purnell will recognize our student recognitions.
Good evening. President Black, Dr. Chapman, and board members, we have some wonderful recognitions tonight. We're always excited to honor and announce our students and recognize their achievements. And tonight, we are proud to present our National Merit finalists. These students were selected from more than 15,000 semifinalists and were selected based on their abilities, skills, and accomplishments. So please join me in congratulating them as I call them forward. First, we have Creekview High School. The principal is Joe LaPuma, and the student is Kathleen Reddy. From Newman Smith High School, the principal is Dr. Stephanie Jimenez, and the student is Raul Carthy. And R.L. Turner High School Principal Dr. Adam Greenidge, and the students are Jara Chandler, Joey Davis, and Sarah Shepard. And I know we have some really proud parents, so we want to congratulate all of them as well. They did a great job. Next, congratulations to Creekview's Anthony Bacolba, who swam an excellent 500 free at the UIL State Swim Dive Championships. He came in third, received the bronze medal, and this is his second year in a row to place in the state meet. So congratulations, Anthony. Okay, and that concludes our student recognitions. And at this time, we are proud to show you a video of our Teachers of the 9 Weeks.
Heidi K. Wood, McCoy Elementary. Isabel Castro Lopez, McCamey Elementary. Kathleen Nosick, McLaughlin Strickland Elementary. Karen McRory, McWhorter Elementary. Brian Mars, Rainwater Elementary. Gayla Moore, River Chase Elementary. Haley Moffitt, Rosemead Elementary. Elizabeth McRae, Sheffield Elementary. Yasina Hernandez, Stark Elementary. Monica Aguilar, Thompson Elementary. Moniqua Long, Blaylac Middle School. Arpine Eglin Sioklu, otherwise known as Miss A, Barbara Bush Middle School. Salvador Parada, Vivian Field Middle School. And Christina Herrera of Dan F. Long Middle School. Congratulations to our Teachers of the 9 Weeks.
And we will have this posted on our website so you can take a look at it again. So congratulations to our students and teachers.
Let's hear it again for the students that and the teachers that were recognized tonight. Especially love seeing all those National Merit finalists. Next on the agenda is the Superintendent's Report, District Announcements, C, Item C1, the Superintendent's Report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that. There's two things I want to announce first, and that is the artwork in front of you is from Blair Elementary, and so if you get a chance, each month we showcase the excellent work that our children do, and there's Blair Elementary. Second, we have a special guest today, and he's the new head coach, athletic coordinator, Tony Castillo. So at this time, I want to talk to the CFB ISD family. As you're aware, we're investigating a situation dealing with 3 of our teachers that are currently placed on administrative paid leave. This is an active investigation, and we are unable to provide any further comments about the personnel at this time. But I want to speak to you directly, our Asian American family members. The community is our family. When you hurt, we hurt. I want to sincerely apologize for the hurt that you've experienced as a result of this situation. In CFB ISD, we embrace the diversity. We respect the differences, and we foster the welcoming environment where all children belong. At the November 12th board meeting, we shared details about the Equity and Equality Task Force. Immediately, representatives from the Asian American community and a school board member will be included in this committee. Additionally, as we include more staff members in our diverse training, which will address how we understand, how we listen, and how we respond to each other, but also to our children. My desire is for our Asian American families to be active participants and to find a solution. In the near future, we will be hosting listening sessions so that we can hear from our CFB ISD stakeholders and learn more about how we can move forward together. Our team strives to be servant leaders. We are here to serve the whole child. We care deeply about our children, and we are here to support in our children 150%. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our board president, Dr. Les Black, and he will share his comments.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. I just want to say that it is core belief in CFB ISD that we respect our community's differences by embracing its diversity. CFB is a wonderfully diverse community serving children from 70 different countries, speaking 55 languages. We as a board are dedicated to ensuring that every student has equal access to the district's educational programs and opportunities. We as a board strive to provide a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment for all students. The recent middle school social studies test question, however, reinforces negative cultural stereotypes. It is hurtful to students and community members, and it undermines our goal of providing a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment for all students. 2 additional core beliefs in CFB ISD are the importance of a growth mindset for both students and adults, and the value of ongoing partnerships with the community. We now have an opportunity to put both of these values into practice by renewing and strengthening our diversity initiatives and training for faculty and staff, and also by inviting our Asian American community into dialogue so that we can learn more about how we can create and sustain an environment in which our Asian American students feel welcomed, valued, and safe. I'm hopeful that the collective concerns raised by our engaged citizens will be the beginning of an ongoing partnership that will ultimately enhance inclusivity in CFB ISD for all students. Dr. Chapman.
At this time, we're going to bring up Ms. Hess, and we're going to talk about student nutrition services.
All right. Good evening, President Black, Superintendent Chapman, and esteemed members of the board. My name is Kristen Hess Saunders, and I'm here tonight as a representative of the Student Nutrition Services Department. I am the director. I recently joined the district in January, so it's lovely to meet all of you and have this opportunity to share our operations update. As many of you know, we are very proud as a department to provide our students with healthy and nutritious, delicious meals. This year, that may have looked a little bit different in terms of its execution, but our goals remain the same. Those were to provide meals that are nutritious, meals that promote healthy eating habits, meals that play an integral part of a child's education, and are prepared to the highest food safety standards. Just a few things about the department. In a normal average year, we run a $14 million operation. We have about 225 employees among our 34 cafeteria operations, which this year also included 4 operations that were providing remote meals as well. We have 92 employees that hold a National Food Protection Manager certification, which goes along with our food safety goals. Our staff logs on average about 2,500 hours of training. In 2019-20, prior to COVID, we had 18 employees who had perfect attendance, and we had 23 of our 35 kitchens that were accident-free. These are some statistics we're very proud of. But as many of you know, last year looked a little bit different. On an average year, we serve about 3.3 million meals. And in 2019-2020, prior to COVID, we had served 2.4 million meals, and we're on track to serve our average 3.3. When COVID happened, we were called to arms. As a support service, it's typically our nature to kind of work behind the scenes. And when COVID happened, we were called to the front lines and essentially asked to show up that Monday after spring break and make sure the students got served. And I like to think that we stepped up to that challenge. After we had service the very following Monday after we returned from spring break, March 16th, and from then forward through the remainder of the semester, we served 442,000 meals, something we're very, very proud of. During that service, it almost immediately shifted into a constantly evolving remote meal size service. As you guys know, things were rapidly changing. And we had about four different phases to get to the point where we were able to serve those meals in the most safe possible way that was accessible to as many of our students as possible. We utilized the Seamless Summer Operation Program so that we were able to feed all the children for free, which was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us. And probably something I'm most proud of in terms of our department was that employee participation in that feeding during that time was based on volunteering. So it was our employees were given the opportunity to come in and work. And you guys recall the hysteria and the fear that was happening during that time. And our staff stepped up to the challenge. We had more than enough staff to make sure and provide that we could provide those meals. And they were sticking their heads inside people's cars to provide meals. So we're really, really proud that our staff was stepped up to that challenge and took on that responsibility. Let's see, that weekly curbside meal service grew to include just one meal pickup because we were trying to limit exposure. And each child per car received one box with 10 meals. And we had 30 meal distribution sites. So we had 4 of our high school kitchens that were preparing all of these meals in bulk, and then 7 outgoing bus routes that took it out to 26 additional sites so that we would ultimately serve at 30 sites throughout the district to provide as much accessibility as possible. And you can see my lovely drawing there of the map as we were trying to route out our different bus routes to make sure we hit every area of our district. I'd be remiss to leave out the fact that we relied on a lot of people throughout this process. So we had a lot of other departments that stepped up and really helped us out. That would include the transportation, maintenance, custodial, security departments, and I actually should have also included the warehouse, who also provided us with assistance during that time. That curbside service continued through summer 2020, so we were able to provide meals throughout the entire summer. And a lot of times pictures speak a little louder than words, so I'll go ahead and share a little video of our service. So as you can see, it was a wonderful time. We were so thrilled to be able to continue to find ways to serve our students. And we were also so grateful for all of the different resources that the district pitched in to help us make that happen. And so our staff was really thrilled to be able to take part in that. So when 2020, 2021 began, as you guys know, many things were also still up in the air and changing. So we geared up to serve the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program. And we did that for about a week. And the Texas Department of Agriculture came back in and said that they would allow us to then serve summer feeding and provide free meals to all students for the remainder of the semester or until they ran out of funds. So we opened up our school year with several new different methods of service that we don't typically provide. In an average school year, we provide cafeteria meal service, but to provide social distancing protocols, keep everyone safe, and also accommodate each different school's needs coming into the year, we also provided that remote service at each of our 4 high schools. We provided classroom service where we delivered meals to the classroom so that we wouldn't have the students gathering in the cafeterias. And then we also provided grab-and-go meal service so that students could come pick up their meals and return to their classrooms to consume them. So each of those was just a different level of accommodation that required some different skills and different resources to make happen. In September, like I mentioned, the USDA passed a free summer feedings that allowed us to feed the students for free under that program through the remainder of December. And then October, they came out again and passed another waiver extension that allowed us to feed through the remainder of the school year, which was a wonderful opportunity for us and also, I think, really truly benefited our student population and community. Since COVID happened, it's worth noting that TDA and USDA have passed 82 waivers issued to address COVID. And those have evolved and involved everything from when we can serve, how we can serve, how much we can serve, to whom we can serve, and for how long. So navigating those different waivers has been a challenge, but it's been one our staff has gladly stepped up to. Some of the challenges we've seen, and I foresee that we may continue to see, is just adapting to new forms of service, which everyone knows this has been a lovely time of adaptation, so it's been part of our day-to-day. Adapting to the changing regulations, because those 82 waivers did come with procedural changes. We've seen lower participation, just because we aren't having as many captive students coming into the schools. We've had supply chain disruptions and issues with food availability. Our operating costs have been a little bit higher. We've had changing learning populations, as you know, when students shifted from virtual to in-person. Staff availability and a little bit of absenteeism, as every department has been experiencing. And then we've seen a little bit of oversaturation of free food sources. So we see fewer and fewer people taking advantage of our free program because there are other opportunities out there for free food. But despite all of those challenges, we had some really great successes. This year hasn't necessarily been one that looks lovely on paper, but one thing that I feel that we can really speak to and that we can feel very proud of is that our staff and the successes that they brought to this program have helped us to really push through a lot of those challenges. So far in this school year, we've served over 234,000 remote meals as of last Wednesday. We've served over 922,000 on-site meals as of the end of February. We are staffed at 92%, which is only down from 94%, and we're pretty proud of that. Our employee retention is 93% since last year when COVID started, so our staff has really been very loyal to the district and also really wanted to stay part of the mission of feeding the students. I know I spoke with a friend from another school district who told me on average they had about 600 employees, and this school year they had 350. So to have our staff stick it out and stay with us and continue on our mission has been something we can really boast about. We still have 87 employees who hold that National Protection Manager certification. Our staff has already met 69% of the professional standards or training hours that are required in a school year since August. 13 of our employees still have perfect attendance despite COVID in this school year, which is truly, truly shocking. and 22 of our 35 cafeterias are accident-free. And I think these statistics truly just show how dedicated our staff is to making sure we provide meals for our community and making sure we're doing it on any level that's called for as the program shifts and change. Some ongoing efforts, we began providing meals for closed school holidays, which was a little bit of a challenge before, but we've been trying to work through some of the different challenges that it presents so that we can still continue to provide meals to our students on days that the school district is closed. So the week before spring break, we actually provided over 16,000 curbside meals, and we offered 2 pickup times and provided them with meals for the spring break, the 5 days of spring break that the schools were closed. So we really felt that was a great success. Then we also, last Friday, we provided meals for last Friday, over 15,000 of them, and we distributed those on Thursday before the students headed home for the weekend, so that we could attempt to provide and make sure that they did have meals in hand when they were not with us. We did that again today for tomorrow, and we'll do it again on those other asynchronous days that are scheduled in April and May as well. And we hope to continue to see success and feed those children. We will also provide grab-and-go meals for 30 summer school sites this summer. As you all know, the summer feeding or the summer school operation is going to be much larger, and the summer feeding operation is going to grow to accommodate that. We look forward to continuing our mission to feed the community in any form that's necessary. We can't really be certain at this time what TDA and USDA restrictions will be placed or what the school year for 21-22 will look like, but we are prepared to take it on and excited to continue to feed our community. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Hess. Ms. Derrick.
Just a statement, Ms. Hess, very, very good. Welcome back to
Thank you.
CFB. And I'm so excited to see the commitment to food for our children, because the reality is we have to treat the whole child, and if we have hungry children sitting in seats, they're not learning. So we have to feed them, ensure that they're not hungry before we can educate them. So well done. Tell your team, well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
For your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to talk about Teacher Incentive Allotment, TIA, Ms. Purnell and Dr. Parker.
Good evening. Excellent, thank you so much. House Bill 3 is a finance bill that was passed back in 2019. The bill was dedicated to providing funds to school districts specifically in order to improve instruction and student outcomes. One of the key components of the bill was creating an opportunity for educators and the district to apply for additional funds through the Teacher Incentive Allotment. The Teacher Incentive Allotment was developed to promote the teaching profession by rewarding the hard work of efficient and effective teachers. From this perspective, 2 goals were prioritized. The first is retaining staff and providing classroom teachers with a realistic path to earning a 6-digit salary. The second goal was to recruit teachers in general and to keep effective educators in our classrooms, especially for those working in schools with more challenging student populations. The legislators clearly defined those that would be eligible for the Teacher Incentive Allotment as classroom teachers. This means that a staff member must be coded as a 087 in order to qualify for the TIA designation. Now, even though TEA mandates through House Bill 3 that each district creates their own pathway, all teacher incentive plans must include these first 2 components listed here. For teacher observation, CFB will utilize the T-test, and for student growth, we plan to use MAP testing. Based on feedback from our staff, 2 additional components will also be included in determining a teacher's designation. Those are teacher leadership and collaboration and student surveys. Now, the first requirement for TIA is to establish an evaluation system based on teacher observation. Determined through staff surveys, monthly TIA committee meetings with various campus representatives, and feedback from the District Improvement Council, the teacher observation component will account for 40% of the teacher's overall score. And utilizing a rubric for consistency across the district and the state, teachers will earn a designation of distinguished, accomplished, proficient, developing, or needs improvement based on the scores derived from these 8 dimensions on a T-test evaluation. Next, measuring student growth. This is the second required component of the teacher incentive allotment. At the beginning of February, an email was sent with a link to a student growth survey to all staff members who are currently classroom teachers in our district. The teachers were asked to share feedback on the reliability and validity of various assessments that we have used in our district to measure student growth. And hands down, MAP testing was the one that most said applied to student growth. Based on those surveys, teachers and their high confidence in the MAP test to adequately and accurately, with reliability and validity, measure student growth, we'll be using these scores in phase 1 of the teacher incentive allotment. And staff members who teach in the grades and courses shown here will be eligible to earn a TIA designation. Now, for a student's score to count on the teacher's designation, the score will need to include the scores will include both the beginning of a year MAP test as well as an end of a year MAP test score for that teacher. Please know that our district is committing to the goal of putting all of our teachers on the pathway to earning this designation. And work has already begun with content area and special program directors to refine growth measures that will be most effective across all additional subject areas as well as grade levels. Input from our Phase 2 teachers are going to be key in the 2021-22 school year as we examine ways to pilot additional student growth measures. Teacher leadership and collaboration is the third component of our plan. Feedback from the District Improvement Council determined that Domain 1, planning, and Domain 4, professional practices and responsibilities, are tangible ways to determine a score in this area. These 2 T-test domains will be especially pertinent as professional learning committees, or PLCs, play an increased important role within our campus and district improvement plans moving forward. Practices that support high expectation and shared ownership for student success that are based on data-driven instructional protocols help and will ensure teacher leadership and collaboration opportunities for our classroom teachers. In our primary grades, though, kindergarten through grade 2, these 2 T-test domains will account for 30% of their overall score. In grades 3 through 12, however, it will comprise 20% of their score. Surveys administered to students in grades 3 through 12 are the 4th component of our teacher incentive allotment plan. Student voice, as measured through an online survey provided by Panorama, will comprise 10% of a teacher's TIA score in grades 3 through 12. Their survey includes questions in 5 areas: the effectiveness of a teacher's pedagogy, expectations of classroom rigor, classroom relationships, climate, and engagement. Due to the readability level required for a student survey, the Teacher Incentive Allotments Focus Group, as well as campus liaisons, felt that student surveys would not be appropriate for our pre-K through grade 2 students or with certain special education programs. For teachers in these areas, the 10% of their score will be added to the teacher leadership and collaboration component that we just showed on the prior slide. Now, with regard to our spending plan, we wanted to gain feedback on how these TIA funds could best be used to recruit and to retain teachers. So the district convened a finance focus group of campus representatives in February. And we introduced and began with the concept here shown by TEA. TEA shares with us that 90% of the TIA funds must be used for teacher compensation at the campus where the designated teacher works. The full amount of the TIA funds does not have to go solely to the teacher holding the designation. Instead, a portion of the funds could be shared with other teachers at that particular campus. And as the compensation committee knew that we would not be able to roll out the teacher incentive allotment to all of our teachers in phase one, they were very thoughtful with regarding how and the input provided of how this 90% of funds could flow to others on the campus and could also be distributed. So within our phase-in-one plan, a majority of our campuses will be using a 70-20-10 split, and we feel that this is in our district's best interest. That means that 70% of the TIA funds received would be allocated to the teacher who earned the designation, 20% would be pooled and distributed to other high-performing teachers not eligible in phase one at the campus they are serving, and the district would retain 10% of the funds for cost incurred. That would be, examples of that would be ongoing development of the teacher incentive allotment in CFB, supporting teachers through professional development in order to qualify for TIA, and other administrative functions. Now, since attracting high-performing teachers to campuses in need of additional assistance, or schools with more challenging student population, the steering committees is still considering an 85-15 split for campuses in the district that they might identify as having a high need. For these campuses, 85% of the funds would go to the teacher who earned the designation, and the remaining 15% would be pooled and distributed to other high-performing teachers not eligible to receive the funds during phase-in-one. At this time, the district has not finalized that list of campuses or how the high-needs campuses or other high-performing teachers will be determined. And as with the majority of the decisions surrounding this, we still need to collect additional input from our teachers. And as a matter of fact, another survey is going out in 2 very short weeks. Here's a sample of what a 70-20-10 distribution would look like for a teacher with an exemplary designation on his or her teaching certificate. Now, the exemplary designation is the middle tier of TIA. That's attracting about the top 20% of educators. Using this as an example, the state would allot $10,000 of additional funds to the district for an exemplary teacher. The teacher with the designation of exemplary on his or her certificate would receive a stipend of $70,000 in this example. 20% of the TIA funds, or $2,000, would be made available to a pool of other high-performing teachers on that campus. And 10% of the allotted funds, or $1,000, would be used by the district to support the administrative cost associated with teacher incentive allotment. Now, a side note, other determinations that were made during that finance focus group from their members included the decision that the money would be earned would be TRS eligible. Our teachers were very strong, had strong opinions about that, as well as the funds will be paid in a one lump sum in their June paycheck. The district's leadership is going to continue to seek input from our staff regarding topics such as how to refine student growth measures for subjects not included in phase one, and to fine-tune assessment protocols for our pre-K circle program and testing. And finally, collaboration is going to continue with TIA campus representatives across the district, and they're going to play an instrumental and a pivotal role as we move into the next school year. I'm going to turn it over now to Dawn Purnell for communications.
Okay, and we know that communicating this information out to our teachers is essential to the success of the initiative. So earlier this year, the district started a page on our website where we keep it updated. We list the most recent information that we have available, and we encourage our teachers to look at that and stay informed of what's going on as we work through this process. And that concludes our presentation at this time.
Board members, do you have questions about the teacher incentive allotment for Dr. Parker or Ms. Parnell? I'll start with Mr. Bocek.
Well, that's all very exciting. I'm excited about the potential reward to our teachers for their hard work in the classroom for our students. I like that. I do want to comment that what I did like hearing throughout your presentation was about the survey and the feedback and the engagement of staff as part of the process in developing this. I don't think there's anything worse than creating some kind of program or new initiative and not engaging those that it impacts. So I just want to thank you for
Well,
that
we
engagement.
started this back in October, and with that very first survey and rolling out to the campuses, we asked who is interested in helping to guide this work. And we had nearly 400 individuals across the district, and they each of those had an opportunity every month or in different focus groups to provide feedback throughout this process.
That's really great to hear. I hope you're getting the same response on surveys that are sending out and that they're participating in the process. I think that's important, and I appreciate the engagement to those that it impacts. Thanks.
Ms. Derrick?
Dr. Parker, I have a question for you. So we are cohort D.
That's correct.
So just for clarification, when does the first payout, the potential of the first payout start? Because I know that's what staff wants to know. Like,
right.
When can we actually get the money?
Exactly.
This is a process.
It is a process. Now, our application is due later this month for cohort D. It will be reviewed. In the next school year, the 2020-22 school year, is going to be what is called our data collection year. It's the year in which we're going to be measuring and submitting that data for our T-test as well as our student scores. And then the following will be the 2022-23 school year. At the close of that school year is when the first opportunity for payout for our Phase 1 teachers would occur.
So teachers will apply for this or participate this at the end of the school year because they're taking the data from that entire school year
Right.
to use for their portfolio for submission.
Or parts of it, yes.
Okay,
So right
okay.
now, yes, so we're using the MAP scores for student growth. So once again, the student scores, they would have to be with the teacher at the beginning of the year as well as the end of the year, plus their T-test evaluation score as well as student scores. That will come together as an overall score calculation and then be made available to the teachers who are still with us at that point in time at the close of the following year.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Mr. Shackman?
Dr. Parker, we're excited about opportunities here. Any thought process to help us understand how soon we might get past just Phase 1? Because if MAP test is, which is a great tool, but if MAP test is a major component, 60 to 70% of our teachers are not in an environment where they do MAP tests, from fine arts to
Exactly.
drama to all sorts of things. Teachers who are teaching at the level beyond that. And so, how soon can we potentially find additional resources to cover that section and in that process?
Right, well, we're already in ongoing discussions and have 2 focus group meetings that have already occurred with our additional groups in terms of the different content areas, fine arts, choir, including athletics and welding, every aspect, as well as other foreign languages that are taught in our district. So we've run our second meeting. Our third one and fourth one will be occurring during the month of April. But I am excited to share with you that we're going to be looking at different proposed components of different values within the next school year, and looking at the different pre-test, post-test opportunities, things along those lines, that as we begin to develop that throughout this year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions? Well, Dr. Parker, thank you. I do want to, I want to sort of add on to what both Mr. Bocek and Mr. Shackman mentioned. And first, I commend you for how carefully this group has gone out there getting input from people, because this is tricky business. Merit pay programs in education are hard to tailor in a way that makes, that works and makes people happy. And lots of people have tried in the past and had varied levels of success. So, but we have seen recently some examples of this working well in nearby districts. So I commend you for how careful the group has been in collecting data and getting input. And I know that you will continue to do that and be careful and meticulous and listen to the input of the stakeholders as you begin to move into the subsequent phases of this program and pull in teachers who are not in map-tested subjects. And it will continue to be tricky, but I think it's very important, in making sure that not only we recruit, but keep people here once we get them here, to keep their salaries competitive, when they're 5, 6, 7 years in. So thank you for the work that this group is doing, and thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, at this time, we're going to discuss a portion of our curriculum audit with Dr. West, Ms. Smith, and Ms. Bailey.
And actually, it is me, because next month in May, you're going to get Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Bailey and our curriculum directors. But what I wanted to share with you tonight is as I was reviewing my notes from when I talked to you at a way earlier board meeting, I think it was in October or November, I talked about the fact that we're entering into a process with curriculum management solutions, and that we would be going through an audit process in the teaching and learning department. And as part of that, we would be looking at our curriculum and analyzing it, and we were going to be answering some questions. Is it there? Is it any good? Is it used? And does it make a difference? And as we were going through this process, it was going to be very important to us that we also looked at our curriculum through the eyes of equality, whether students had access to our programs, and equity, whether they had support and systems necessary for them to be successful in our curriculum efforts. So I'm telling you that you're going to be hearing more in May, because that's what I promised you. I said at that time, by the end of the year, and Dr. Chapman reminded us at that time that the end of the year was not December, but the end of the year was the school year. and so May is our end of school year, and our group is on the agenda to do that. But I wanted to also, one of the things as I work with people in leadership is I say what you all have already expressed tonight that's very important. Earlier in our pre-meeting, you expressed that we don't need to throw a bunch of new things at people just because they're new. And just a moment ago, you said that it's important that people are a part of a collaborative process and that everybody is invested in the work. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. And so I want you have this at your table, and it's under the pink piece of paper that's in the part of the superintendent's report. You just reached in there earlier to see the teacher incentive allotment information. But you'll find this, and it also has a Sharpie attached to it. So the reason for the Sharpie is I want you to take the Sharpie and across the front of this write draft, because that will help us remember that this is, I'm sharing with you because it's important to me in leadership. One of the things that I say to people all the time is, what are you leading? And as a part of what you're leading, you've got to define what you're leading, and you can't define what you're leading just in a vacuum and all by yourself. So this is draft, because in this work, as we were working through the curriculum audit process, also as a part of what the work was, teaching and learning had to have a lot of conversations over time about, well, what are we leading? and what piece of this do we have responsibility regarding. So that's why I wanted you to write draft, because there's a lot of other people that are going to be involved in this work. So now I would like you to turn the page, and you notice we didn't even staple it, and that was intentionality too, because it's also important as a leader that you always are able to take parts of what you're leading and always make sure that you have those pieces ready. So whatever group or audience you're speaking to, you're ready to speak about those. So the reason that this first page is about vision, motto, beliefs, and mission, as we continue in the work of curriculum and what's tested and taught and written, that as we work with our community and our parents and all of the different stakeholders that we have, we will always refer to what is our mission, vision, belief, motto, all of those things. So if you turn the page again, you see that we have what is an attribute of a CFB ISD graduate. And this is always important to keep in the forefront of all of our minds too. What are we trying to do in all of this work with curriculum, instruction, and assessment? These are important things. Turn the page again. And on this page, this was the teaching and learning group talking about their mission and their goals. But again, draft, because the principals need to be brought into this conversation. Our teachers need to be brought into this conversation, and this was us as a group going, what is it that we're doing? The page I want to spend just a little bit more time with you on is the one that at this time says teaching and learning philosophy. Because as we're going through a curriculum and looking at the pieces and parts of a curriculum, it's important that we have a philosophy around what it is that we're doing. And I hope that you notice that as a part of that, we have to understand what we believe, and that we also know that the things that we put on our walls in here are not just about decoration. This is about what we believe. And our CFB ISD beliefs are right there. And we looked at those and tied those into the parts of in our school system. If we're talking about our curriculum, our beliefs fit into those. So you probably can see that we believe, where it says we believe all students deserve excellent learning opportunities. Number one, that fits there, and it fits there. The second one, we believe that diversity is a strength. Therefore, we will honor all people and embrace our differences. Number three, knowledge, skills, and talent can be developed. Therefore, we will use language that encourages a growth mindset. So growth mindset is a part of our work here. You'll notice that the next one fits into we wanted an addition to what we believe. We believe that all students deserve an equitable education. We're going to provide an equitable environment that's inclusive, safe, welcoming, actively seeking to end biases and ensure equality, high outcomes for students. I won't read all of these to you, but I wanted you to see how it was very thoughtful of the group, and over time in the teaching and learning department with the directors and others that were involved, really thinking through what is it that we're leading? What are we leading for as we're doing the work of curriculum and the work that we're doing? So on the next page, this is again teaching and learning as a part of curriculum design. In CFBISD, our curriculum, and you see there's 4 bullet points. I won't read all of those to you, but I think that it's important that you know that at the top of mind from the beginning in looking through the curriculum that it was important that we foster equity, honor diversity, and provide equitable access for each and every student. These were important conversations and thoughts about our curriculum and what we're leading for. If you look at the next page, where it has the triangle and the principles of curriculum, early on, when I talked about this curriculum audit process, I did speak to the fact that it is about not only the curriculum, the understanding by design curriculum that all of our teachers have access to, that they get on the computer and they can look at the written curriculum, that's the work plan. But another piece of what we lead in this district through teaching and learning, through the principals, through the teachers, and why it needs to be a collaborative process is because the education system and what we do within our schools is not just about what's on a piece of paper. It's also about that taught, that instruction, the actual work that happens in the classroom. And the reason that tested is on here is because, and you all know this from our House Bill 3, the House Bill 3 board goals, your House Bill 3 board goals that you have. We need to assess and we need to know where we are as we look at as we look at what our written plan is and what's happening in the classroom to make sure that we're reaching those goals, and make sure we also know by student name where we need to work to fill gaps. So I think this is an important piece of what we'll be speaking with everyone about. The next page where it has all of these colors and taught, plan, targets, I want to just point out in that first part that says plan, that teachers will use the UBD, and that stands for Understanding by Design, units of study to develop daily lesson plans. Teachers are expected to study the goals in stage 1, the assessments in stage 2, exemplary lessons in stage 3, and make adaptations to the lessons based on student data. So it is about a teacher accesses our curriculum, but they do have professional knowledge that goes into designing lessons because they know their students and they understand the diversity of their students and what students need, and they also have data that they need to act on, and they need to act on that based on what their classroom and their students need. The next page, I won't speak to that one right now, but this is a part of, as we talk about our assessments and building that's another piece of the conversation. And then that last page, and this goes back to what we were as I said, with solution tree, or just the different things that we're going to do with our professional learning communities. On this last page, this is completely a draft. This was left in here for you to look at, knowing that all of those bullets are not fully developed, but that the holding places are, because when you are talking about curriculum and instruction and assessment, it requires an understanding, and this goes back to what Texas Instructional Leadership does for us. It requires an understanding of what kind of work do I do as a district leader? What kind of work do our curriculum directors do as leaders? What are our school leaders in campuses have as far as impact and input into the work that we do? Where are our teachers, our students, and our families included in that? So there's a lot of work that still needs to happen and be done on that particular page. But I wanted to share that with you tonight as a pre-conversation before next month, when you're going to hear more from our directors, more about what the curriculum management plan looks like, and more about what the future, or what work they've been doing to answer those questions that I mentioned earlier. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you again. I'm very excited about the work. I'm very excited about the fact that even during a pandemic, we did lots of good work that is going to move us forward and into the future. So thank you.
Board members, do you have any questions regarding the curriculum audit for Dr. West? Ms. Derrick?
Dr. West, just a quick clarification. This is an internal audit, correct? This is not an external audit?
We had an external group that came and helped us look through all of our items and things, but the work that we've been doing over this year has been a group that has looked through all of the things that particular group that came in said for us to look through. So that's what we are
So an
doing.
internal audit
Yes.
as a result of the external audit. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Mr. Boccic?
So, and I might be jumping ahead to May, because you said management plan that maybe Ms. Smith and Ms. Bailey will present, but things identified during the external piece, then the ongoing,
Yes.
monitoring curriculum and delivery. I mean, as things are identified, those things are changed and
Yes.
monitored based on, or changed then.
Yes.
For implementation going forward and for the next year future, right?
Absolutely.
That's continuous
And
improvement.
it has to, and that has to be. So as we learn from this group about the important things and how to, and what to look for in your curriculum, then we had checklists and we had all kinds of things that absolutely we're working on and acting on now, and we'll continue to do that based on how deep the audit went, or how deep the answers to that went.
Okay.
Any further questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Dr. West.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the PTA update, just want to state that I hope that you'll keep John Matthews in your thoughts and prayers. I think it's very important that you think about him. Appreciate that. At this time, we're going to do our PTA update. Ms. Brady.
Good evening. I'm Kim Brady. I am the president of the CFB Council PTA. I hope some of you were able to join us last night for the amazing School Board Candidate Forum. I have to say it was a great event. But if you did miss it, lucky for you, we posted on Facebook Live. So just go to our CFB ISD Council PTA Facebook page and you can watch it again and again. I wanted to publicly thank all of our local PTAs who continue to persevere and bring our community together with virtual storytelling, virtual parent and student education, parking lot activities, and teacher treats for all our schools. We are so grateful to all of your continued spirit through this indescribable year. Our next exciting event will be our Life Member Ceremony, where local PTAs will honor and submit 2 super volunteers who have gone above and beyond this year for their campus. After they have been honored by their local PTA, they will then be honored by Council PTA on April 22nd at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Please join us. Check it out on our website, Facebook page, or Twitter for the link to join us to celebrate these amazing PTA members on April 22nd. If you or someone you know would like to serve on the Council PTA, this is my plug. To serve on our board, we have several positions available. We offer no salary and no benefits, but we are looking for great people. So please, if you know of anybody or anybody who's interested, please send them our way. Our final delegate meeting of this year will be held on May 13th at 6:30 via Zoom. And yes, it is a Thursday, so please mark your calendars. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. And thanks to the PTA for everything you guys do. Okay, at this time we were initially, I think, scheduled for a brief recess before we do audience for guests, but I see we have just two right now. So I think maybe we can push through and through audience for guests, then take a brief recess before the consent agenda, if that's all right with everyone. So with that, the next item on our agenda is 3, audience for guests. Before we begin, I will remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling of audience for guests. Anyone interested to speak in person during audience for guests must sign in and list the topic they want to discuss. Each speaker will be allowed to speak once during audience for guests. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board, dictated by board policy BED local. Because the board wants to hear from as many of you as possible while also keeping the meeting running efficiently, groups of more than 5 people who want to present a particular viewpoint on a topic should appoint one person to speak on behalf of their group. Again, that speaker's presentation will be limited to 3 minutes. If you speak during audience for guests, either individually or on behalf of a group, please remember that the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda for the meeting. Last, We ask that you not discuss students who are not your own child. Timekeeper, Vice President Sally Derrick, please time each speaker for 3 minutes, and speakers, Ms. Derrick will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Our first speaker tonight is Joy Lim.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, President Black, board members, and audience members. Thank you for allowing me this time to speak tonight. My name is Joy Lim. I am a current junior at the University of Richmond. I attended Kent Elementary School, Blaylock Middle School, and graduated from Creekview High School in 2018. The love and support that I have received from this district is overwhelming, which makes this incident hurt that much more. On March 30th, 2021, a 6th grade social studies class was administered an online quiz on their unit over China. On this quiz, there was an unbelievably appalling question which I had the opportunity to capture. The question is as follows. Which one of these Chinese norms is true? A, it is normal in China to cut off someone's lips if they burp in a restaurant. B, it is normal in parts of China to give children 50 lashes by a cane if they steal a piece of candy. C, it is normal in parts of China to eat cats and dogs. This racist indoctrination is dangerous, violent, and harmful to the students and community members of Asian descent. Although it was a multiple choice question, the question perpetuated misconceptions and harmful stereotypes in the answer choices that were provided, further solidifying the negative stereotypes of Chinese communities. As a Korean American myself, I found this incident to be incredibly damaging to the Asian American community in Carrollton, especially in light of the racial tension and AAPI hate crimes across the country. It is through this example of institutional failure that I speak today with the following demands. 1, transparency throughout the investigation and involvement of at least one Asian professional in said investigation. 2, someone be held responsible for the creation and administration of this quiz. 3, a formal and sincere apology from the district and educators involved to the Asian American communities in CFB ISD. 4, a clear plan of action to further educate and prepare instructors through diversity and equity training. 5, invitation to and involvement of people of color in the implementation and execution of said diversity trainings. I hope that we can move forward as a district and not stay complicit in institutional racism. I hope that this can be a learning point for everyone in this district in combating systemic discrimination and teaching the next generation to be compassionate individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lim. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lim. Our next speaker is Mary Beltran. Mary?
Hi, good evening. My name is Mary Beltran. I am also a CFB alum, and I'm a current junior at Southwestern University. And I actually drove down here from Georgetown today, and I just want to echo and amplify everything that Joy just said. I'm here to back her up. I'm here to tell you that as an alum, I feel this way too, and I have nothing else to add, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beltran, for being here. That concludes our audience for guests, agenda item number 3. And at this time, I believe it's a good time to take a brief recess. Should we say 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes. It's 8:10, and we are recessed. This meeting of Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees is called back to order at 8:19 p.m. Our next agenda item is agenda item number 4, the consent agenda. Helps if I turn the microphone on, I suppose. The consent agenda is a mechanism that the board uses to approve a number of routine items together with one single vote. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the public notice for this meeting includes a list of all consent agenda items, and the board has been provided ample information about these items in advance. Prior to any action taken on the consent agenda, board members may request the withdrawal of individual items for clarification or discussion. Board members, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda at this time? Mr. Bocek.
Yes, I'd like to request removal of item 4D, consider or approve teacher contracts. I'd just like to remove that for some individual considerations.
Okay. Mr. Bocek has requested the removal of agenda item 4D. Any other concerns about the consent agenda? So if there are no other items to be removed, do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda as amended? Ms. Derrick.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented tonight.
Okay, I have a motion from Ms. Derrick that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a second from Mr. Renteria. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. With a vote of 6 in favor and 0 opposed, the motion carries. The next agenda item is number 5, non-action items for discussion, and 5A, budget update. Mr. Bassett? And this will be your blue copy, hard copy.
Okay, good evening, President Black, board members, Dr. Chapman. It's great to be back after missing the last couple meetings, so get back in the swing of things and get excited about budget. How about that? Okay, a lot of slides. It says 28, but it's not going to take that long. So anyway, excuse me. All right, so let's go ahead and get to it here. We're going to go through the budget initiatives that we have planned for this coming budget, and they reflect on some of the workshop input that was given before. We got feedback from the campuses on how they would spend additional funds. A brief legislative update. And we have some new slides that gives us some information on how to look at enrollment. We have some of the potential new staff that we have planned listed out. And then we also want to give you a forecast update as well as show you our preliminary numbers for the 21-22 budget and what to expect in May. So if you're at the work study, this is where the priorities that were discussed and finalized by the group. Competitive compensation being one, increasing the allocations at the campuses, supporting programs, the attendance incentive at summer school enhancement. So the budget initiatives that we have, and this is non-staffing, okay, this is now the summer school dollars are staffing related, but it's all on a supplemental pay basis. It's not new FTEs. And so that's why we're counting it here, not in the staffing section. Okay, and so that's 1.3 million. Now, the potential bell schedule change, I'm not saying we're going to change bell schedules, but if we do change bell schedules to go from a 3-tier to a 2-tier system, we may need as much as $500,000 for additional buses and routes. The substitute costs, because the substitute costs before, during, when you have the virtual, you don't have as much substitutes, and so we may need to adjust the budget then if we are back to normal. The campus allocation increase, which was discussed at the workshop, $500,000. The significant disproportionality, that's related to our special ed program, and it's something we have in place this year. The department allocation adjustments, and so the significant part of that amount is really for C&I and also for the campus work, about $580,000 for those departments. We also have about 130,000 in there for fine arts, 128,000 for athletics, and so it's pretty much everything, core base. We have the need to replace some fuel tanks on the capital side, and then property insurance. We're expecting property insurance to go up because of some of the recent things that have happened in the market. So this is the feedback we got. We asked all the principals to tell us, their top 3 things that they would spend money on if we increased their allocation by 25% on the per student basis. And you can see a lot of similarity. Both mentioned classroom supplies and professional development and tutoring, but then some differences after that. So they were all the principals, were pretty excited about those possibilities. And again, we haven't adjusted those amounts in over 10 years. And so it's really, kind of amazing. And so anyway, a lot of good feedback, and we feel pretty good about recommending that change. Okay, so I'm going to talk about ESSER. And we're going to talk a lot about ESSER in the next couple meetings probably, but I'll give you some information today. There's also a fund balance bill that Chairman Huberty has put forth that we need to talk about, as well as give you an update on the ADA hold harmless. Okay, so ESSER 1 was part of the first CARES Act, okay, and we received $4.1 million, but that didn't have a material impact on our finances because the state pretty much supplanted all of that funding. We recognized it as federal monies, but our state revenue was reduced by a corresponding amount. Okay, I think we were able to keep 5% of that. Okay, which was it's a good thing. 5% is better than nothing. Now ESSER 2, you can see the ESSER 2 amounts, and this is from law already in place. These first 4 numbers, how much the total funding nationwide, $54.3 billion. 5.5 billion allocated to Texas. What's allocated to these schools is almost $5 billion. But what hasn't been decided on by the state is how much they're going to supplant that. Now, there's a lot of political pressure, a lot of back and forth on this. They are going to send some, a portion of this to the districts. We just don't know how much. If it was 50%, that would be $8.8 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. Okay, if it was 50%. And I think that's as good a bet as any that's out there right now. Now, what's really interesting is what you see in the last column for ESSER 3. And this is out of the last bill that was approved in Washington, the $1.9 trillion bill. 122 billion for school districts, nationwide. Allocated to Texas over 12 billion. And we go all the way down, same math. And then if 50% of that was allocated to us, that'd be $19.8 million. Now, these are all one-time amounts. These aren't recurring funds. So we're going to have to get creative in terms of how we would spend monies of this kind of magnitude. And there's a lot of stuff out there, and I'm going to go over some of the potential ways, to do the funding. And there's been a lot of discussion, but we really don't know what these numbers are going to be. I saw something where somebody said that 90%, it was in the bill that 90% was supposed to go to school districts. I mean, if that was the case, our number would be over $30 million. But that wasn't, I only saw that in one source. I talked to somebody else today, and that hasn't been verified. We know that the state is really trying to figure out a way that they could supplant at least a portion of that. But we don't know yet, and so it's going to take some time. Obviously, hopefully I'll have an update on that in May, but it may take a while, okay? But in the meantime, we have to plan. We have to put a plan together because we're in the window of spending now. And as I'll show you here in a minute. So the use of funds, so the ESSER 1, really the use of funds is very similar. The first one it spelled it out is, everything you're doing to prevent and prepare and respond to COVID. Well, when you think about responding to COVID, well, we're responding. If you're trying to close the academic gap, that is a response to the virus. And so some of those things are covered, and you'll see in the slides. But a brief thing is, address learning losses, which is what I just mentioned, preparing schools for reopening and testing, repairing, upgrading projects, so to improve air quality in school buildings. So there's a lot of there, and there's going to be a lot of latitude. we do believe. Here's some more information on ESSER 3. This one, had 130 billion, all huge dollars, okay? But the allocation is based on the title, Part A numbers, so it's the same kind of allocation methodology that we've seen. So we think that those numbers are okay. But they could say, spend 80% of those funds on a wide range of pandemic expenses, response. So recruitment, demographic studies, unemployment, a lot of different things. 20% has to be, at least 20% has to be used for learning loss. And so I'll give you some examples of what that could be. And it can include one-time staffing. Now, there's some new provisions in here for maintenance of equity. We think we'll be able to handle that. We could have some more information for you on that in the future as things get finalized and the guidance from TEA. So here's the time frames. There's a lot of information on the slide, but the main thing to realize is that once the numbers are finalized, by the state, that's really when, if you look over on the right side, the state must award the funds within 1 year of receiving them. So they're going to get the funds for ESSER 2 in January of 2022, okay? And then once they get the funds for ESSER 3, they have to get the money to us within 60 days. The award, what you can spend the money on, though, goes all the way back to March 13th, 2020, when all this fund started, okay? And we think that the timeline is going to be through September 30th of 2023. It's a big, big window, okay? But we also know that any gaps that need to be made up from an instructional perspective are not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work to do that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. So some of the things that if we look at potential ways to address learning loss, more pre-K and K intervention, tutoring services, more extended school year, high school credit recovery, smaller class sizes, okay? And a lot of this will require hiring staff. The one thing about when you're talking about hiring academic staff, there's usually a fair amount of teacher turnover and aide turnover during the year. So if we do have to go up and eventually reduce teachers in terms of numbers, there's always a fair number. I think we hire over 300 teachers a year, okay? And we're not going to be hiring 300 new teachers, so there's always a fair amount. All school districts have a fair amount of teacher turnover. And so anyway, I do see that kind of thing happening to help with something like, the smaller class sizes. And there's always turnover in aides as well. More on, improve PR efforts to locate and recruit students. We're doing a lot of that. We're scrambling, for enrollment. We've been working on that since July. Before and after school care, demographic studies, student outreach, increased staffing to improve outreach, air quality improvements. We've done a lot of work on that. Water fountains, PPE, sanitation, increased custodial staffing to make things cleaner. Air quality on buses. They really have cast a very wide net on potentially costs that are allowable. Substitute teaching, unemployment insurance, additional nurses, and even HR staff to answer questions, bus drivers, and if we have, health benefit costs related to the pandemic. Technology, we know there's been a lot of that going on already. So anyway, there's a lot going on with ESSER, and we're going to be talking a lot about that. We're trying to figure out how we would spend dollars of that magnitude, and we're going to be coming back with information in the future. And so we're kind of thinking along the lines, the budget is, okay, what's kind of general fund and more long term, and versus ESSER and whatever else. But like, for example, these incremental costs for summer school we were planning on already. We've been talking about that for some time, but that's clearly, it's an incremental above where we were the summer before. So that's clearly potentially covered by ESSER, okay, because it's meant to close the gap. So there's going to be some play between these funds, and we're going to do our best to plan that out and communicate it to you. Okay, let's change gears here. We got so Chairman Huberty does not like the fund balances that the school districts have, and he's talked about that for many, many years. And so he's put together a bill that a district fund balance in excess of 110 days would have to be spent either, by the end of the year to pay down debt, lower tax rate, compensate employees, or pay for deferred maintenance. We're over 120 days. There are several districts, and there's many districts that are higher than us in terms of the amounts. But there's a lot of problems with this bill, and we've given that information to the legislative delegation on some of the concerns we have with it. I mean, for example, when he's talking about this, he would exclude what is spent on capital out of the general fund, and that's kind of one-time expenses. For us, it's about $3 million. But he's talking about excluding that for fund balance calculations. Well, the rating agencies don't exclude that, and we just got finished going through a rating agency exercise as part of this bond. And so there's to really think through the impact of what you could be doing to limiting the fund balance like this. I don't think everything's been thought through. And so anyway, we have some concerns with this, but there's a lot of bills out there. I mean, thousands, I guess, but in terms of this setting and in terms of a budget update, this was definitely one we want to make you aware of, and we'll keep you informed on how this one's progressing. Okay, the hold harmless. Long story short, we feel like we're going to meet the qualifications for the full year hold harmless for this year, and I'll show you the graph we showed you last time to show you how that line compares to where our attendance has been. The one thing that's really new is we're not expecting a hold harmless for 21-22. Okay, we're just not expecting that, and so we really got to work hard, continue to work hard on our enrollment, and continue to work on how to improve our ADA, and I'll update you on. Well, you've seen some of those numbers at that last workshop. So you saw this slide last time, but we've added a few weeks to this, and so you could see we are closing the gap on how our weekly enrollment this year compares to last year. We're still low. Okay, I mean especially the kids in the lower grades, didn't show up in pre-K and in kindergarten, and so but we are closing that gap. We were just above from an ADA perspective, weeks 23 and 24 there. You can see we had recent drop, and so we'll continue to keep track of that. But that dotted line that's there, that's the ADA hold harmless. So that ADA hold harmless is very significant to us. We're glad that we're going to be able to qualify for it, and so that's good news. Okay, the next two slides are a new way to look at enrollment, and we gave you because there's a lot going on here, we gave you a full page for these so that you could read it. How about that? So anyway, Jennifer found this in Forecast 5. Forecast 5 is a tool we use for benchmarking, a lot of other information, and they have just a lot of data, and they put together, just some very interesting information. They have all the data that access to all the data that all school districts and charters submit to PEEMS. And so they take that and they put that into their system. So this just shows how our overall enrollment has progressed. But then when you look at some of our subpopulations, okay, and the subpopulations are very significant to us because we get different funding, for the subpopulation. So you have the economic disadvantage, and you can see how that's grown over time. Our at-risk population is over 50%. Okay, that may be a surprise to some folks. You can really look at English as a second language and how that's changed, and English language learners, and how that's really grown since 2012. I mean, a steady increase up. And then mobility is actually, vocational has gone down a little bit. Mobility's been pretty stable. Gifted and talented increase, especially in the last couple of years, so that's a good thing. And so anyway, you can see how these things shake out. So it's just a new way to look at enrollment. Probably won't have this I'll probably show this to you once a year, but you haven't seen this yet. If you look on the next slide is pretty much just from a race and ethnicity perspective. And so you can see the growth on the Hispanic population, and then the decrease in Anglo-white, and the slower increase on the African American, and then you have the Asian number, then 2 or more. So anyway, this is information that we thought you'd be interested in. New way to look at our enrollment. Okay. One of the bigger things that we're suggesting from a budget perspective is front office PEEM support and to address some of the front office efficiencies we have, especially on the elementary side. So if you look at this slide, and I think you were showing this when we were talking about doing the attendance incentive, for the elementary school attendance to be lower than middle school or high school, that's very unusual, okay? The other leaders in the district and me that have been in other school districts, we've never seen this. Usually the elementary has the highest attendance, and then middle school, and then high school. So the fact that our elementary attendance is 91.7, that's an opportunity for us. I mean, there's really, something needs to be done, and there's some ways, I think, to get that up higher. And I think we're going to be able to address some of that with what we're recommending. What we want to do, so right now, the attendance work being done at the elementary schools is basically being done by an elementary clerk that's one of the lowest paid employees in our district. And it's not that they don't know what they're doing, but there's a lot going on. If you ever walk into an elementary campus when it's normal, it's a little bit quieter now, because you have a lot of students on the remote. But when everybody's there, it's crazy. My wife used to work in one for many, many years at a title school in San Antonio, and so it can be crazy there. A lot of our campuses only have the principal secretary and that one elementary clerk. And the elementary clerk is doing that work on the data side and then doing a lot of other tasks. And it's a stressful job, and we have a lot of turnover there. And when you have a lot of turnover there, that means you're just dropping things, especially potentially on the data side. And so what we want to do is we want to reclass the elementary clerks, 24 of them, to PEEM specialists. They would actually be at the same level as the secretaries. And so so that's really kind of one of the biggest things we need to do. But for the elementaries that we have that have less than 500 enrollment, we want to add a half-time person, a 5-hour clerk. So what you'll see at those campuses now would be, 2.5 people, a principal secretary, the PEEM specialist, and then a 5-hour clerk. And so somebody that could be there, during the busiest time. The principals would have the latitude, so we're talking about 25 hours. The principals would have the latitude to have those hours where they think it's most appropriate. And so, but that would make a big difference in terms of being able to handle the chaos that does happen when there's, all kinds of things going on, and still being able to maintain the integrity of the data, that we need to have strong attendance. One of the other things that we expect the PEEM specialist to do is whenever there's an absence, it's follow up with that family with a phone call. Actually, and most school districts do that. Whenever you have somebody's absent, they're actually calling that house and saying, "Hey, Johnny wasn't here. When he comes back, you bring a note." Sometimes the parents don't know that the child's absent. Okay, and so if you do have that consistent follow up, you start changing the culture. Okay, and then it will improve the numbers. And then what we'll do is make sure that all of the campuses with over 500 in enrollment will have a full-time elementary clerk, so there'll be 3 full-time staff. So you'll have the secretary, you'll have the PEEM specialist, and you'll have the elementary clerk. All right. At the middle schools, there's attendance clerks at all the middle schools, but we want to be able to have at least one of those attendance clerks moved up to a PEEM specialist, have a little bit more responsibility, and to make sure that everything's being done, because there's more opportunities for CTE and other subpopulation revenue that we could capture at the middle school that we may not be getting now. Okay, so that's one of the things, and that's a small part of the investment. We feel like the benefits, is increase in attendance, from the follow-up calls, as I mentioned. Besides revenue, everybody thinks I'm just interested in revenue. I'm interested in revenue. But if the kids are in the seats longer, guess what? They should be able to learn more, which is why we're here. So, I got to put that first there. So more opportunities, for students to learn. So we do expect less turnover at the middle school and the elementary school levels. If we have somebody at a higher job class, we'll have less turnover, and so that'll really help. It'll definitely help with customer service at the elementary side, because they'll be able to give people a little bit more time on the phone or when they're there in person. We think the customer service will improve, and then of course less data errors and potentially more revenue overall. Anything that we can do on the subpopulation counts is really going to help us when we're trying to make that transition away from the formula transition grant to the regular formula, because the regular formula is where all those subpops count, and the more we get on the subpopulation side, the less we rely on the formula transition grant. Okay, here's the staffing that we're looking at this time. We have, you can see 18 elementary. We have adding 1 on the secondary side, CT and Avid 6, Fine Arts 2, and so, quite a few teachers. The cost of the PEAMS reclasses is almost $500,000, okay, but it's a significant number, so included that there, but there's no new FTEs. The elementary clerks, the part-time ones that'll need to be added, and the others that would be full-time at the campuses that are over 500, that's almost, it's 11.5 FTEs, so that's almost 500,000 there. We need to add a couple of assistant principals at the elementaries to ensure that all of our elementary schools have an assistant principal, okay, and so that's the point of that add. Adding a router to transportation, we've only had 1 router, and that's not a good place to be. And you want to really be efficient on the transportation side. We definitely need a router. We need a computer tech and a cabling tech. Those costs will be 0 because we're paying out more than those costs in overtime. Okay, so it makes sense to have the FTEs, and then we do need to add a security guard at Salazar. So that what we're looking at right now from a staffing perspective is 1.4 million. Now in the end, some of these things like Avid, CT and Avid, some of that, and depending on how the elementary teacher, some of those teaching expenses might be ESSER eligible. Okay, we're still figuring all of that out. But we do feel like these are the ones that we need at this time. Okay. We've been showing you the financials, and we've been showing you transfers out kind of in one lump sum. But it's a big number, and I wanted to just explain a little bit more about my thought process and what we're doing on transfers out. And so as you know, what was in the budget before for 1920 was $8 million for athletics. But then we knew we were going to have a fair amount left over, and we started in the middle of the year to start moving money into the technology internal service fund. And so we ended up making a contribution for the whole year of almost $24 million. Okay. Right now we're forecasting to have at least $5 million, and that was in the plan and the budget to put $5 million more into the technology fund. You got $3 million there for the PPRP, which is COVID related. And then you have the school nutrition amount because of the deficit they have. We talked about that last time. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to continue to grow the fund balance. And so what I'm showing you here is that, our forecast, the way our forecast is lined out, we think we're going to have a surplus in 2021 of $5 million that I'm planning to sweep into the technology fund to keep our fund balance from growing. So I've broken that into 2 numbers where you see the base contribution and then the FB fund balance sweep, okay? The preliminary numbers that I'm going to show you for 21-22 include an additional $5 million on the transfers out, additional $5 million, the base contribution for technology, and then $2 million we think is going to need to go to student nutrition just in case as it continues to recover, and hopefully maybe it won't need that much, but we'll see. But we're planning on $2 million on the student nutrition. But then you can see based on the revenue that we're getting, if we were going to have a break-even plan, we would put 11.9 into the technology fund again. Now, these next numbers I'm going to show you for 21 and 22, they don't include an increase in compensation yet. We haven't made those recommendations, okay? We know that that's a priority, but I'm just showing you, I'm going to show you numbers here of what this would look like with the new staffing we've talked about, our current staffing, and then we can talk about the future. So we are expecting local revenue to be 316. That's less than the federal because this federal number includes, and it's high. It's $9 million. It's more than you saw last month, because this includes $3 million that we're expecting to get on the federal side as part of our the recovery from the PPRP, whatever that acronym means. I could go back to that prior slide, but it's a COVID-related expense, and so we do think we're going to have that. But that's why we're going down in that revenue from that 9.3 to the 5.4. Payroll expenses without new compensation would actually go down to 217, and that's because that doesn't include the retention supplement. The retention supplement, obviously the raise carries over from the prior year, the 2% raise, but the retention supplement of 4.4 million does not. Okay, so that's why you see that decline. And then you see the other expenses, Chapter 49 payments, our recapture, and then I gave you that detail for the transfers out on the slide before. All right, so if we, so we do have some latitude to do something on the compensation side, and then so we have that to discuss, next time, as well as what's going to happen from an ESSER perspective. And so, what to expect next time in May, we'll update the forecast for the current year, and then we'll give you an update on what we're thinking for 21-22. And a lot of that discussion is going to revolve around ESSER and what we expect to hear. And we'll see how much more we learn in the next month, if there's other budget initiatives that are needed, and then we'll come with some initial compensation recommendations. There are other districts that have put a stake in the ground, but we don't have enough to give you a list of what other districts are thinking yet. I mean, Dr. Chapman speaks with the other superintendents regularly. I talk to some of the other CFOs regularly. Everybody's kind of holding things close to the vest right now. Most of it really is everybody's just wondering about ESSER. And what that means. And that's really kind of dominating the financial side of what the senior staffs in the various school districts are really thinking about right now. All right. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bassett? Mr. Shackman.
Mr. Bassett, it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
I mean, we haven't been this confused over numbers since you've been gone. With reference to Senator Huberty's attempt to cherry pick from school district funds, we know we don't think it's going to be as strong as he initially probably has proposed, well, he has proposed and he would like. But we were also talking about some other possible moves into some other funds that would create, and I know technology was one, and are there any other things that are on the horizon that will help us to maintain our funds, but to keep them out of harm's way from the general fund?
Well, I don't know. Anything you think of? I can't think of anything right now.
Okay.
That's out there. I mean,
the only thing, capital improvements like our fields.
Yeah.
We could do that. And we're looking at it right now, and I'll tell you, there's very little traction of 34, 45. So, but we need to always be aware, just in case. Yeah, absolutely. But it's definitely a bill to be aware of. The fight that's happened in the last week and a half, I don't think it's going to take on as much traction.
Mr. Bocek.
Thank you for the information.
Sure.
On the slide on, let's see, 21, average attendance percent levels, and you might have mentioned this, so I apologize, I might have just missed it. What's the time period snapshot of this average?
So that was actually our kind of last normal year.
Okay.
So that's 18-19. These are our 18-19 numbers. Okay, it's not 19-20 because we know 19-20, half the year, the last two.
Agree, okay.
But yeah.
So
18,
this
19.
would kind of be the baseline.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call. I mean, let's hope that we're going back to a normal year. But
Yeah,
this would
and
kind
we
of be
showed
the
you-
baseline of what we're trying to.
Yeah, we showed you the slide, and I don't have it in here, of how our own numbers have changed, the past 8 years, and we went up, but then the last couple 3 years we went down to that overall, some pretty low numbers for us overall. So.
Okay, thanks. And then on slide 24, with the proposed staffing additions, and I like the breakdown of this. I don't know that we've ever received it in this level of detail, but so the teachers secondary 1 FTE, that's kind of surprising to me. I mean, I guess teachers are dependent on enrollment, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we need enrollment, or is it because there are CT and AVID, so
Yeah, and the fine arts are also more on the secondary side, okay? So that's secondary regular ed. But, the large enrollment growth, really because we have lower numbers on the pre-K side and the K side, than before, the bulk of the enrollment growth that we're going to realize is on the elementary side.
Okay, and then, so the fine arts, that's at the secondary level? Those
Yeah,
are
I think
additional
so. Yes.
positions?
Yes.
Requested, or was there, there was an evaluation? I mean, how is that figured out, that we need two more? Okay, okay. And then, I'm not expecting an answer on this at all, or a response. I would just like to ask if we could, or maybe you already have an answer, if there has ever been a look at the athletics side of our staffing and reducing the classroom side of their position to allow more focus by those coaches on the athletics side. Have we ever taken a look at that? And maybe block scheduling is going to help with some of that and freeing up their time. I don't know. But is that something that we've ever looked at?
Yeah, we have looked at it, and block scheduling will be a part of that conversation. But there's also going to be the flip side of that, to where they're doing a whole lot of coaching, and they've got a conference period every day, and so there's some. We're putting some stuff together right now that we can bring back to look at some of that, but it's going to be on both sides. So we just found we're spending a lot of FTEs for very little teaching, and so we've got to. It's on both sides of the and each campus is a little different with that.
And looking at ways to try and minimize the impact of some of that, and coaching comes to mind because you see them at our campuses late in games, and figuring out how to get that more into the school day. And I don't know if additional teachers in the classroom help that or not.
No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, I was a coach myself, and that whopping stipend that they get is part of that after school hours. Now, again, you add that up, you do the hours that they spend times the stipend they get, and it comes down to pennies. I mean, we all know that. But unfortunately, you really have to look at it on an FTE standpoint,
Right.
meaning people, warm bodies in the classroom helping with those children. And so there is some conversations being had. We had it actually this week again. And so we're diving into that right now and looking at, just like you were saying, the modified schedule versus a traditional at the high schools.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, all of our staff put in extra hours, and
absolutely.
I wish the stipends were more, but yeah. Okay, thanks. That's all.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Bassett? Thank you very much, Mr. Bassett. It is good to have you back.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
The next agenda item is 5B, construction update. Mr. Mulrooney, you are up.
And you have some documents in front of you for our construction update, the folded legal paper size.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, members of the board, President Black. Thank you for the opportunity to present a construction update. A few less tables than Steve had, but more pictures, because the guys have been real busy doing some fantastic work. We have 3 active sites at the moment. Vivian Field is about 51% through construction. Our architects there are Huckabee, and our contractors Jackson Construction. We are well on track for that August delivery date to be moved in and ready for that August of 2021. We are exploring some additional scope items, which may be busy during that time. We may not be completely done, but we'll be 100% occupied in all our classrooms at that point. So we've handed over that first area, which is in that blue phase, and we're in active construction in that green phase. I must say that we've recently, right before spring break, we had a lockdown, and Jackson did what they needed to do, and our teachers did what they needed to do, and I just have to commend the staff and everybody there, because it is really tough when you have turning over new classrooms, you've got temporary doors, temporary walls going on, full construction site going on. Everybody did an excellent job, and with Chad's leadership there, we really are blessed with a great team. So here's a quick aerial. You can see we're starting to cut open those roofs, create those natural light areas that we did in that first phase that had been opened up. Those 4 more quad pods coming in. So it's just a quick aerial where you can see we're moving back towards that side of the campus. Inside, this is what it looks like. Blowing and going as we start to rip down all those walls, cut out. Now we don't have to take out as much foundation this time. There's a lot less changing floor levels in this area, thank goodness, but we still have to cut open those roofs, so some risk there. I always joke and say we're looking for Bobby Shaw's lunchbox because he's the project manager on this and actually went to school here, graduated from Turner. So every wall we open up, I tell him to double check to see if we can find that lunchbox for him. Over spring break, we did the full electrical turnover. This was an aging electrical system, which was a massive undertaking by Jackson. I won't lie, I was a little stressed because school was going to start on Monday, some way, somehow, and when you take out a major electrical service like this, it's pinch and go. But we were ready for it, and we opened up. Everything ran smoothly. I'm also happy to report that we're going to have a track that goes all the way around. Exciting news. The grading's done. We're starting to cut that field so you can see that 4-lane track, grass field with the amenities, the long jump, all those types of things going on. So they'll be right up there with the other middle schools. Little visit before spring break. We bought lunch for all the staff members, about 95 people, and visited with them. Just an open door, chatted about the construction. We heard some concerns about dust and noise, which we made some adjustments on. Was just got to talk about the new classrooms, and Chad does such a fantastic job. I mean, these guys have taken on every possible challenge during a crazy year in portables, and they were so positive, so kind, and then grabbed their lunch, went, sat in the courtyard, and there were kids out there learning as well. So just really starting to see that community come together in that space. You also see the karate lesson going on there as well as a music lesson. So those teachers are already starting to think dynamically about their spaces, where they can do these classes and stuff like that. Over at Turner, we also opened up some new spaces. We're focused here in this area L. The cosmetology suite came active over spring break. On the left is the before, where we were, and the right is where we came to. So that was, again, creating that real-life studio experience for those kids. That is such an incredible program. Joe's team from CTE runs there with those kids earning real-life certifications that they can use. So we wanted to give them a space that kind of celebrated that art, give them that real salon feeling. So this was it with the furniture in, bring some life to that floor, some cool ceilings, as well as some new furniture for them. Sheffield. Apparently, our drawings are approved by the City of Dallas. Yes. Wow. Now the form that says that all the drawings are approved has to be circulated, and of course their fees have to be collected. So that's what we'll be doing next week, but we have gotten our blessings from all the engineering departments. So we are ready to get rocking and rolling. I'm really happy with the work Jackson has been doing. Like I said, every conceivable idea to keep us on track by getting our steel ordered and everything else that they can do. So right now we've used up every possible bit of slack that we have to open in August of 2022, but we are on track. And really, if we hadn't had Jackson on our existing projects and they delivered so well, I'd be a lot more stressed. Was concerned, but we have the right team to make this happen. Looking at our upcoming projects, so that's what's under our belt. Let's look at Smithwoods this evening with the past GMP. Next month, we'll be looking at Perry, the elementary schools, the Marquise, and Creekview and Ranchview. So that does give us about 15 active sites going into the summer. So think of Lilia and Bobby taking on all the stuff. They've got some maintenance folks helping them as well. So it's a good team, but it's going to be real busy. Over at Smith, so that is a recognized GMP, and that's those graphs that you see in front of you, which will show you that high-low number as well as our construction costs in there. Just a reminder on the scope, we're going to be focused in that main core area with the renovation to the library, then going north towards that new student entry, which will become the construction P-Tech lab. It's a very exciting partnership. Joe's team hasn't skipped a beat. They've got the P-Tech launch. They've found some fantastic partnerships. And so that construction partnership is really going to be a gemstone. In the library, we've done some branding. This is a little different from the graphic you've seen before, but this is because we have students involved and teachers involved, and they really emphasize the connectedness of the campus. And so the LPA team has been working closely with them, and then we adjust when we hear that feedback. And so this is some new graphics that will be going into the library based on that student input. Over at Perry Middle School, VLK is working closely with CORE to get those pricing together. We're working through the design process, kind of getting into the areas of the campus that need to be identified and highlighted. So right there at the historical auditorium is going to be our moment to remember our past. Really honoring a lot of those monument stones, the plaques, all the histories that we have going on there. And the new entrance here will be our display space. Adjacent the library and the art room and the making space, that's where we're going to celebrate our kids' work. So those two right at the front door will celebrate both our past and honor our future. As we go into the campus, you're going to see 3 distinctive villages, 6th grades, 7th and 8th. Each of those are going to start to take on characteristics. So it's easy wayfinding, as well as create those collaborative spaces like we've seen at Vivian Field. Our next package is the elementary school package. This really comes in 2 sizes. The first is the form, what I call the McWhorter-ish projects. These were based on the same footprint as McWhorter. It's the River Chase, Thompson, Blanton, and Freeman. These get that McWhorter package with the front entry, the library, and then the mechanical part of that. The 3 lights, as I'd like to refer to them, as Las Colinas, Good, and La Villita. These are our newer buildings. They're really very light technology updates with some furniture, very light touch at those. Our schedule there is obviously we're getting our GMPs ready for our next meeting. We'll have our GMP and we'll be in May summer construction. Because of the COVID gap, we realize summer school is going to be vital. So the construction team is working with curriculum, and we will host summer school at every elementary school. We've modified all our construction schedules. We've worked very closely with Jackson, who is our awarded CMR on this, and we can do it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be some very, very long nights going through July, but we're going to do it because we know that those kids need to learn through June in summer school. So I really commend Jackson for being a partner to us to figuring out how to make that happen. That's the package overview. Elementary marquees, this will be GMP'd as part of the Tier 1, just for efficiency's sakes. We still keep it separate so that we can report to everybody how we're doing on our marquees. So when you see the GMPs next month, just remember that elementary Tier 1 includes that marquee number. So we're still going to track it separately because we want to report it. It's a high-profile job, but we want to just, when you see that number, just you won't see it distinctively different. So just want to give you that heads up right now. We're in the final construction documents phase of that. After numerous different meetings with different groups, we came up with 3 primary components. The school had to have the school name. We wanted that proud name, as well as Carrollton-Farmers branch ISD. Clear on the signs. The schools really celebrated their mascots. That was vital to them. And then overall, the digital sign to communicate that information. A lot of the jurisdictions have different nuances, but the general gist is that the size of the sign has to be similar. So as you increase one of those components, one of the other components has to get smaller. So LPA did a real nice job, rendition after rendition, maximizing the balance of those 3 components so that it's clear where you are, clear who the mascot is, and a good-sized digital display to communicate that information. However, we didn't forget about our 9 existing signs, and they now all say Carrollton-Farmers branch ISD on them. So you can see the 9 schools there that we modified with those letters on that. As we work through the marquee package, we're going to finish up the 15 marquees that we have proposed. We will then be working with the BOC and coming back to potentially look at modifying these signs to match the condition of those signs, if not at least modify the controls so that we have web-based controls of those signs. They tie into our information system. So we've got to get through the pricing exercise on the 15 oldest signs first, and then we'll look at these 9 signs next in the package. Over at Ranchview and Creekview, this is a big mechanical package. It doesn't have the same renovation numbers that Turner and Smith have. So we're going to get to touch a few spaces, but it's really not the big work that you're seeing at Turner and Smith. So it's big in the mechanical, new roof, new HVAC, and Creekview, that's massive. We're going to be changing out that 2-pipe boiler chiller system to rooftop VRF system. So we're going absolutely to the front, best system that we can for that school, but that's going to take a lot of our budget and it's going to take a lot of our effort. So not a lot there. However, we do get to do a small renovation in the first year, and that's an exciting change for Creekview. We're going to be bringing JRTC from Turner up to Creekview. So we met with the Navy. We got all their requirements on all the classrooms, the storage, the uniforms, the armory, all the goods, bells and whistles that we need to do, and we've located them on the first floor so they have that easy outside access as well as adjacent that main corridor. One of the things that we heard from Turner is that when you're on the outskirts of the campus like that, you're not part of that family. You're not part of that campus culture and so forth. So that was really important to us. So we've created a distinctive entrance which we'll be able to celebrate their program, as well as have this community space inside, kind of like that collaboration space to allow that program to grow, which we're really excited about. Not to be outdone, because 21 is planned, let's get into 22. The action of the board this evening, we're going to be looking for our first, which was the delivery method. We're going to CMR these projects. These get tough, I won't lie. These are real tough projects because the dollars get tighter, so we want to get those construction partners on board to help us estimate and plan with our architects to see what we can do with them. Over at the elementary side, package 2 is the 6 elementary schools: Davis, Rainwater, Kent, Stark, McCamey, and Blair. Like I said, the dollars get really small, even smaller than McWhorter at this point. So our construction partner is going to help us figure out exactly what we can afford to do and maximize those dollars. Over at the middle school packages, that's Blaylock, Long, Bush, and Polk. Again, the dollars are short there. We got to figure out. So we're going to be planning that with our architect, VLK, as we go through this process, and you'll start to hear more about that. But I'm excited to be able to start selecting contractors to help us figure out where best to spend our dollar. Because you'll see we really pride ourselves on finding a way to punch even a small amount of money, make it look good. And finally, the stadium as well. We've got some guidance from the VOC, and we'll be estimating that with our construction partner and making sure that we can get the most out of that dollar as well.
Are there questions from the members of the board? For Mr. Mulroney? Comments or questions?
I love question.
Mr. Shackman.
Are we in a struggle with funds because construction costs, materials are increasing, really hard to get, and the cost is becoming significantly higher almost by the week? And how is that impacting the whole bond program?
We're fortunate in that escalation was low going into this, and we planned adequately for it. We forecasted that when this thing started to warm up, there would be a rush on things. Not at the rate that it is. We're seeing 20-25% in steel and wood. It's also strange because it's which one. So this is one of the great things about the construction manager process, is that we can work with that construction manager who's constantly hearing from the market, bidding jobs. And we actually adjusted some of our stuff so that we went to very standard steel, no custom pieces, so that we knew it was available. So we were able to make some smart decisions like that. I think going into 22, we're still looking strong, but we're going to monitor that.
Any other comments, questions, board? Ms. Urbacek?
Well, I can't let it pass without recognizing the Carrollton-Farmers branch, ISD, on the marquee. I think it looks great. I think, as I've said, it's very important because I want it advertised that those are CFP schools. Those are the best schools. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mulroney. The next agenda item is 5C, Annual Announcement of Board Training Credit. So I'm going to have to read about the training that the board has been through this past year. So, under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I am required to announce the name of each member who, 1, has completed the required continuing education, 2, has exceeded the required continuing education, and 3, is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. The requirements for training are measured as of the first anniversary of the date of the trustee's election or appointment, or 2-year anniversary of his or her previous training as applicable. There are 7 training areas for board member continuing education. 1, local district orientation. 2, orientation to the Texas Education Code. 3, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. 4, team building. 5, additional continuing education. 6, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. And 7, identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. At the conclusion of this announcement, I will announce any board member's training in excess of the continuing education requirements. Local district orientation. The following first-year board members have completed the local district orientation training: 1, Renteria and Les Black. Orientation to the Texas Education Code. The following first-year board members have completed the orientation to the Texas Education Code training: 1, Renteria and Les Black. Post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. No board members were required to complete post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code training for the time period covered by this announcement. Team building. The following board members have completed the annual team building training: Sally Derrick, Tara Bachik, John Matthews, Guillermo Ramos, and Randy Shackman. The following board members were not members of the board at the time of the annual team building training and therefore did not attend the training for the year: 1, Renteria and Les Black. Additional continuing education. The following board members have completed the additional continuing education requirements: Sally Derrick, Tara Herbachik, John Matthews, Guillermo Ramos, Randy Shackman, Juan Renteria, and Les Black. Evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. The following board members have completed the biennial training on evaluating student academic performance and setting goals: Sally Derrick, Tara Herbachik, John Matthews, Guillermo Ramos, Randy Shackman, Juan Renteria, and Les Black. Identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. The following board members have completed the biennial training on identifying and reporting abuse and trafficking: Sally Derrick, Tara Bachik, John Matthews, Guillermo Ramos, Randy Shackman, Juan Renteria, and Les Black. Exceeding required continuing education. Board member Sally Derrick exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 17.5 additional hours. Board member Tara Arbachik exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 10.75 additional hours. Board member Guillermo Ramos exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 1.5 additional hours. Board member Randy Shackman exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 12.75 additional hours. Board member Juan Renteria exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 11 additional hours. This report will be added to the minutes of this meeting. The next item on our agenda is item 6, items for discussion and/or action. The first agenda item is 6A, items removed from consent. I believe we removed item 4D from the consent agenda. I will turn that over to Ms. Bachek.
Yeah, this is related to item 4D from our consent agenda. I move that the board approve item 4D, teacher contracts, removing from consideration Newman Smith High School, Creekview High School, and Ranchview High School.
The motion from Ms. Bachek is that we approve 4D, item 4D, removing Newman Smith, Creekview, and Ranchview High School. Is there a second? There's a second from Mr. Ramos. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving this item 4D with Newman Smith, Creekview, and Ranchview removed, please raise your hands. The item passes, the agenda item passes by a vote of 6 in favor and 0 against. Do I have a motion regarding Newman Smith, Creekview, and Ranchview? Ms. Urbacek.
I move that the board approves the teacher contracts as presented for Newman Smith High School.
Okay, Ms. Urbacek has moved that the board approve the item regarding teacher contracts for Newman Smith High School. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
There's a second from Mr. Shackman. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please show by raising their hands. All those against? Okay, so the motion carries by a vote of 4 and 2 abstentions. Okay. Do we have a motion regarding either Creekview or Ranchview? Ms. Urbacek?
I move that the board approves the teacher contracts as presented for Creekview High School.
Okay. Ms. Urbacek has, Ms. Urbacek has moved that we approve the contracts as recommended for Creekview High School. Is there a second? And we have a second from Mr. Ramos. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please show by raising their hand. The motion carries by a count of 5 with 1 abstention and 0 votes against. And we still have Ranchview High School. Is there a motion
Dr.
regarding
Black,
Ranchview?
I move that the board approve as presented the contracts for teachers from Ranchview High School.
Okay, Mr. Shackman has made a motion that we approve as presented the motion for teacher contracts from Ranchview High School. Is there a second? We have a second from Mr. Ramos. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please show by raising their hand. The motion carries. All those against, please raise their hands. Motion carries by a vote of 5, 5 for, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Okay, I think we've covered that, haven't we? Okay, so that is our item removed from consent. Our next agenda item is 6B, consider approved declaration of private drainage easement per City of Dallas for the Sheffield permit. Mr. Mulrooney, I believe this is you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Black, members of the board, Dr. Chapman. The Sheffield is located in the city of Dallas, who has a requirement that you don't modify the drainage patterns, and there's some backwards and forwards between the local jurisdictions and the state in this, but the gist of it is there is a small amount of water that comes off those neighbors that were originally part of this property, separated out later, that still feeds onto that slope along that edge of the property. All we have to do is create a drainage easement that says that we see the water's there, we're not going to dump a bunch of extra water on it, and we're not going to do anything fancy to that piece of land. We can't build within 5 foot of our property line anyway. It doesn't impact the Sheffield design whatsoever, so it's quite an easy easement to grant along that property line. 5 foot from the property line allows a small amount of water with existing drainage from those sites to come over there, and then it goes out towards the street. So the easement this evening that was presented to the board is for a 5 foot drainage easement along that property line at Sheffield.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mulrooney? Do I have a motion regarding this agenda item? Ms. Urbacek?
I move that the board approves the easement declaration as presented.
Do I have a second? A second from Ms. Derrick. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please show by raising their hand. And the motion carries by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 against. Thank you very much. Our next item is item 6C, consider approve RFQ 2021-02-012, External Financial Audit Services. And this is Mr. Bassett. You were back up.
Yes, sir. So we, at the request of the audit committee, we went ahead and did an RFQ for outside external auditing services. And it is a good practice to look at that every 5 years or so. We actually had the incumbent, I think, for the past 8 years. And so it was time to go ahead and go out and take a look and do the RFQ. We did get quite a bit of interest, as you might expect. We went through the process, and we're making the recommendation for Whitley Penn, and they're a solid firm, a great reputation, very involved in the school community from a Tazewell perspective. Like a couple of the others are as well. But anyway, that's basically our recommendation. Be happy to take any questions you may have. The fee's a little bit higher than what we had the prior year. We were expecting a little bit of an increase. It is a larger firm. What is interesting is that the prior firm didn't even put in an RFQ, but I think they realized that they've had the business for a long time. It was probably a good idea to suspect that they wouldn't get the business. And so anyway, that's kind of where we're at and what we're recommending.
Do I have a motion regarding this item?
Go ahead.
Ms. Derrick.
Mr. Shackman and I are probably about to say the same thing as members of the audit committee. Thank you for taking the advice of seeking the RFQ, because a second set of eyes after a couple of years is a good thing. Can't hurt for us to have a fresh set of eyes on our finances, because we want to make sure that we can answer to our community. So thank you.
Any further comments?
Did you want to make the motion? I'll make the motion then and move that we approve as presented the external financial audit service consideration.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Shackman. Do I have a second? There's a second from Ms. Derrick. Is there any discussion? Mr. Ramos.
I do want to take the time to thank Randy and Sally for suggesting that. I know it's not that we're disappointed with the previous firm that we've had, but I do know that Randy has been one that has always suggested that we get a second fresh set of eyes to look at this. And I am glad that we're doing that. But then again, I want to make sure that the previous firm doesn't think that we don't approve of them. It's just good to have a second set of eyes reviewing it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please show by raising your hand. All those against, raise your hand. Looks like the motion carries by a vote of 6 in favor and none against. And thank you very much, Mr. Bassett. Okay, moving along. The next item is 6D, consideration and possible action on resolution for compensation to employees during school closure due to the statewide winter storm. Mr. Bassett.
I'm going to take this.
Oh, Dr. Chapman.
Yeah. So, during COVID, whenever people worked extra hours, we actually paid them an additional fee. And then whenever the ice storm came, people worked. We paid all of our employees. You did this last month, but there were some people that were actually boots on the ground. And so we feel that we need to pay them that extra fee like we did during COVID. But then you're going to ask, so we're going to do this every time? And the answer is no. And so what we've decided to do, anytime we fall under a state of emergency, so we fell under 2, crazy enough, in 1 year. And so therefore, that's going to be our platform moving forward. And so I hope that you'll agree that these individuals, mainly our plumbers, maintenance grounds, custodial staff that came in during the snowstorm, that we compensate them for that. And so if you approve, the board would need to read this resolution tonight before approving.
Any questions or comments before? Are we ready for a motion? Do I have a motion regarding this item?
Wants to read it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Ms. Herbachik?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
You all ready? Okay. I move that the Board of Trustees approves the resolution for compensation to employees during the school closure due to statewide winter storm, and this is as presented. Whereas on February 12, 2020, 1, Governor Greg Abbott declared a state of disaster for the state of Texas due to the severe winter weather posing an imminent threat of widespread and severe property damage, injury, and loss of life due to prolonged freezing temperatures, heavy snow, and freezing rain statewide. And whereas inclement weather resulting in power outages and related district operational impacts required the closure of all schools and facilities in the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District. And whereas the Texas Education Code 45.105 authorizes the Board of Trustees to expend funds of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District for purposes necessary in the conduct of public schools as determined by the board. And whereas inclement winter weather forced Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District to close entirely on February 15th, 2021 through February 21st, 2021. And whereas the board finds that a need exists to address pay for employees who are instructed to report to work during the school closure. And whereas as to non-exempt employees who are called on to work during an emergency closing, the board concludes that payment of these employees at a premium rate as provided at DEA Local serves the public purposes of maintaining morale, providing equity between idled employees and employees who provide emergency-related services, and recognizing the services of essential staff. Whereas the Board of Trustees is of the opinion and finds that it retains sufficient control over payment of employee compensation for the period or dates identified to ensure that such public purposes are accomplished. And whereas the Board of Trustees is of the opinion and finds that it is in the best interest of the district and the district will receive a return benefit from the authorization of premium pay to the district's employees who reported to work during the inclement weather event. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District authorizes that non-exempt employees who were required to work during the emergency closing that occurred on February 16, 2021 through February 21st, 2021 shall be paid at the premium rate described at DEA Local, and the authority granted by this resolution is effective for the dates identified in this resolution unless the board takes action to authorize payment for additional dates. And be it further resolved that the superintendent of schools or his designee shall determine the timing and manner in which such compensation shall be paid.
Thank you, Ms. Brocek. Do we have a second to that motion? Ms. Derrick? We have a second from Ms. Derrick. Is there discussion? I see no discussion, but I do just want to add that on behalf of myself, and I'm sure the board would agree, our public thanks to everybody who was working during those days, all the staff, everything they did for the community, setting up warming centers, doing work on the buildings to prevent further damage. I'm sure whatever we're going to spend in compensating them now is less than what we may have spent in repairs had they not been there during those days that the weather was so cold. So thank you to all of you who were out in that weather and doing everything you could to serve the school district and the community. All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of this agenda item, please show by raising their hand. And the item passes with a vote of 6 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion carries.
Very good.
All right. So we are down to agenda item number 7, comments from board members regarding posted agenda items. So board members, do any of you have any comments you wish to make at this time related to the posted agenda? Practicing wait time. Nothing? Okay. We have to model, right? All right. Well, if no one has anything to add at this point, that brings us to agenda item number 8, which is adjournment. Thank you all very much for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned at